We're going to talk about data today, and this is a famous cover on The Economist a couple of years ago, talking about how data was now, in fact, more valuable than the world's oil resources, and it's definitely probably the case right now, given that people are having to pay to have oil put back into the ground right now. So we know that data is extremely valuable. But I'm going to start with talking about the way that it appears on balance sheets. And that's relevant because a lot of folks, when they talk about data, they really don't know how to value it. And one of the places people sometimes go and say, well, how does it turn up on the balance sheet? And the reality is the balance sheet is typically meaningless for the valuation of data. And there's a very famous case involving Caesar's Palace. And Caesar's Palace was originally PE and hedge fund backed. It failed to perform post the GFC, it fell into bankruptcy, and one of the hedge funds that had backed it took control of this otherwise ignored asset, which is 30 years worth of gambling data. Now, it was not recorded on the balance sheet, and the creditors sued, and there was this question about how much is the data worth. And what they found ultimately was that the data was valued at roughly $1 billion, and it ended up being the highest value asset, in fact, in the entire group. So let's talk a little bit closer to home. Qantas. Now, Qantas almost goes bankrupt in the late 2000s. Hopefully it doesn't go bankrupt again. And data was regarded as a very undertapped and undervalued resource. And Qantas put a lot of focus on its data monetization efforts. The program was very, very successful. And in 2008, it generated an underlying EBIT for the airline of $372 million and a profit margin of 24%. Now, just to put that in context, that means Qantas was making 4 times the margin selling data than it was on flying people around the world. And in those data margins, and the data business in general was growing at 7 times the speed of the rest of the business. And why this is relevant is that basically data saved Qantas. Right? And in fact, it ended up being valued at roughly half the value of the airline. But again, it's off balance sheet. Right? And this is very important because what you'll typically find is that data is not well captured within financial statements. And this is true more broadly of intangible assets. That intangible assets are typically off balance sheet. They're not captured within those financial statements. And that is problematic when it comes to justifying projects around data, because there's this big question mark about what are they worth and what value are they going to deliver for us. And so that's where we do a lot of work with clients, is helping them to understand exactly what that stuff is worth and what kind of revenue, what kind of margins, et cetera, it's likely to drive